Please welcome the incredible Jackie Minsky.
Thank you so much for having me, Renee. I'm excited to be here.
Well, thanks for joining me, you Jersey girl. Yeah,
I am from New York, but
New
yes, I'm in
York,
Jersey now.
New York girl. Well, we're in the mountains of British Columbia, so we're like Jersey, New York. It's like the same thing, right? I know you guys probably don't like hearing that.
I don't know why, but there is like a little rivalry between New Jersey and New York. So, being that I was raised in New York and now I live in Jersey, when someone says Jersey, I'm like, no, it's like I have to correct. And I don't know why, because now I live in Jersey. So, I guess I am a Jersey girl.
Well, there you go. Well, you're. I feel like it's like maybe where you were born and raised. So if that's the case, I'm from Northern Ontario, so just
Mm.
north of where I grew up, there used to be permafrost, like where the land never thawed. It was that cold all the time.
Oh,
And
wow.
now it's extended up further because of global warming. But yeah, our winters were just diabolically cold with so much wind and snow, and it doesn't happen as much anymore. But I know how to survive in the wilderness. My first license, I was 12 years old, and I drove a snowmobile.
Oh,
Ah,
wow.
yeah,
That's fun.
yeah, super fun. You can't do that in New York.
No, you would get arrested within the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, right. But you can do other crazy things there. Um, so we got some really cool things to talk about. And I want to double click on this whole world of public relations because that's kind of my history the last 13 years in being in PR. We worked with funded technology companies through to pivoting and only servicing like female entrepreneurs, especially coaches. But there's been this massive shift. And I believe public relations is like misunderstood because it still works. But where are we at in this world of PR? What's your sense right now?
So I got to be on both sides. I've worked with celebrities and I've worked with non-celebrities. And I believe since COVID, what I have seen happen is a lot of people want the celebrity lifestyle and they're doing a lot of what we call pay to play, thinking that that feature is going to make them an instant celebrity without strategy. So that's been happening a lot. And that's very harmful for real PR because real PR, whether you're working with a celebrity or a big company, you have to have an actual marketing strategy, business strategy, and the PR amplifies that message. And somewhere along the line, that message has been broken. And now everyone thinks if I just do a feature, I'm going to be somebody, the sales are going to convert. And when people come to work with my agency and me, and all they want is a feature, if their branding isn't good, I'll be the first to tell them, like, this book or this product won't do good on the shelves. And sometimes they get offended and they're like, well, I'm already in print. And I'm like, well, then I really can't help you. I'm sorry, because branding, whether you want shelf life on a product or you have a book, that's the first thing you need to look at before PR, your strategy, your branding, your image, because it starts there. And again, PR amplifies what you're building. It's not going to just make you famous or popular overnight. And I think because of social media, I think everyone's chasing that instant overnight success. And that's just not what happens when you do the pay to play PR space.
Oh my gosh, I remember the transition that happened when it was like a slap in the face for me when I was working with clients and it went from the the getting the media coverage, whether it was like a mention or a feature, was what helped you grow your social reach. And now it's like you need to have some sort of brand and social reach in order to get those features. So it's almost like the media outlet almost needs to see the social proof, like the validity and credibility before they make the feature. And
Mhm.
I was like, I'm out because there were instances when I was pitching journalists, like we'll just say like Susie versus Lisa. And Susie had a massive following and like high engagement, but Lisa's story and like what she was building was far superior, but did not get the feature. And
Mm.
I get it. I know why, but I'd love to understand your perspective on that situation.
I think there's a few things that could happen in those situations. It's sometimes, do you know the writer you're pitching to? If you do, sometimes they will take the story. So networking and PR is huge. Like I've been fortunate enough, like I have some close friends at Page Six. So if I need like a good story to get covered, they send it over and then they'll send it to the New York Post because it's all one company. So it really depends. And on the other side of things is maybe that specific reporter or writer is basing their decision on social media, right? So there's writers who they love a good story, and there's writers who they do care about the social media. So it really, again, it matters who we're pitching. And because a lot of the times these days, also some of those writers that are picking the big influencers or people of influence on social media, a lot of them sometimes are already being paid under the table for some of the features. So they want to see the social proof to make it worth their story. So there's a few different things happening all at once. And that's why PR is it has so many moving pieces. And that's why I love it so much. Because again, when people come to work with me, I'm like, that's not what we're doing if you want to work with me, So
Ooh,
yeah.
okay. And that's where I think people misunderstand it. So when they look at, hey, I want to get in the media, like their 10 out of 10 is here's my list of like 10 publications or podcasts I want to get on. And if you don't do that, then you suck. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, first of all, you could have the most wickedest story and be the most influential person, but if you're pitching something that's just not going to land, it's not going to land.
Well,
Um,
also I train a few publicists who just I love teaching other women who want to be in the PR space. Like truly, PR is a very interesting field to be in. And a lot of the times what they do is they'll just send emails. And I'm like, okay, but you as the publicist, as the agent, what is the strategy here? Like, what are you pitching? Are you attaching the story to a charity? Are you doing something that the writer is going to want? Like, there has to be a strategy behind your pitch also. It's not just, hey, my client has a really good story. There has to be more to your client's strategy from a marketing perspective that's interesting, hasn't been done, or is newsworthy. So there's, again, many moving pieces. And I always tell the publicists that are just sending emails and they're not thinking of a strategy, I'm like, your main priority as a publicist is the strategy to then go pitch it. That's actually the fun part. That's why I started, PR in the first place. It was the strategy behind the pitch, not the pitch by itself.
so if you were like Jackie from 5 or 10 years ago, and let's say you were going to do this on your by yourself, you couldn't afford yet to hire someone like yourself. Where would they begin?
So for me, it was branding. And I got my start the same exact way. So I started my podcast years ago, and my first podcast ever, the name itself was catchy. It was Stupid Wise Girl. And the brand itself, my old Instagram, it was very branded. And I built that audience from Stupid Wise Girl. So I already had the strategy before I began the personal brand, the podcast. And I started pitching it to many different magazines. And when they would see or hear my name, Stupid Wise Girl, automatically they were like, okay, what is this? Like that's an interesting kind of name. And then they would go back and they would hear the spirituality. And it was Stupid Wise Girl because as humans, and I don't want to call anyone stupid, I can only call myself stupid, but we make decisions even though our wiser higher self always has information. So I called it Stupid Wise Girl. And then when other writers or journalists would go deeper into that message, they would see there's already a strategy in my branding. So it was different, it was interesting, it was worth talking about. So if someone's listening and they're at that beginning, don't just pitch yourself to tell your story, because unfortunately and fortunately, there's so many people with stories. If you really want to stand out, think of, what can you attach your story to? Are you hosting an event? Is a percentage going to a charity? What are you doing that's different in your pitch, in your strategy that the next person may not be doing yet? And sometimes it's branding. Sometimes it is the brand itself that if you really carefully consider, the branding sometimes is the marketing and the PR. So there's many different ways to do it, but I would definitely say think of a strategy, think of who you're trying to reach, think of who your audience is, and create something that's not been done before.
So I can hear the New York accent when you say the word audience. I'm like, there it
And
is.
call.
And there it is.
It comes
Um,
out.
yeah, yeah. I was gonna ask about, so you said like your branding could be your marketing and your strategy. So what do you mean by that?
So I love this because a lot of times when I rebrand people, I always think of like, if you think of the biggest brands, right? Like Nike, Apple, if you think of their branding is their marketing. You see a bit in Apple, you already think of an Apple iPhone. You see a check, you're already thinking of Nike. And that's not done, that was done with a strategy. And how it's done is you think of psychologically what you want that brand strategy to be. Again, who's your audience? What do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? There's a company that I'm working with now, I'll tell you, and they want to be they want a food product. And their current branding, it's great, but if you want shelf life, you always have to think of the consumer. Is it colorful enough? Is it going to catch someone's eye? Is it something that someone's going to have fun with when they take selfies or something with it? We're in the time of social media, so you have to consider all things for shelf life, for audience, for community, for culture, right? So your branding in that sense has to have that strategy behind it, but you have to know who your audience is and what you're trying to accomplish through your branding, which then, yes, can become your marketing and your PR.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to keep going on this thread
Yeah.
because I'm so intrigued by this. You got me thinking of all the products that I use. And
Yeah.
I would say, like, I use this coffee brand called One Cup. So they make Keurig cups that are from ethically sourced coffee beans, organic, and it's a compostable cup. Now, the only reason why I chose that is because my friend Kira is the filter for everything in my life when it comes to health, from like what pots and pans do I use, what supplements do I take. Her word is like the word for me. And now I see this brand everywhere. Now, I used to buy it on Amazon, but now I've discovered that they sell it at my local, whatever, grocery store. But for the life of me, I can't remember what the like branding looks like. All I know is that their packaging is cute and colorful.
And that I don't think was done, that was done intentionally. A really good strategy starts in the branding development phase.
How do you like when does that start? What's the beginning? Like, let's look at personal brand for example, because I'm actually on this journey.
Mhm.
So for me, I think of branding as like kind of like how what feeling am I do I want my audience to evoke? Right? So they come to see me, Renee Warren, the brand, and they're like, I feel seen and heard, and she's so relatable and I'm inspired. So then I think, what color does that embody? What font does that embody? What am I saying? But people who don't have this creative bone in their body, what do they do? How do they begin? Like, what's the first step?
They should really take a look at who they look up to. Who do you look up to? Because those are the fonts, those are the colors, those are the brands that you're probably comfortable with, around, or you're similar to. Because subconsciously, if that's someone you look up to, that's probably in alignment with who you're capable of becoming, because that's talking to a version of you that that person already overcame.
Ooh, I love this. Okay, so make a list of like three people you look up to.
Yeah.
That's a
And
good
take a
start.
look at, yes, and
And,
take a look
and
at
then
their,
why? Yeah.
yes, why. But then if you want to go to the creative side of things, take a look at their fonts. Can it be similar? Can you put something personal for yourself in it? Can you change the colors a little to still be yourself? Because what I tell people is even though you're looking at others for inspiration, you still have to come back to self and be like, okay, I like that font and I like that color, but it doesn't feel like me. Maybe I like the pink, but maybe can I add a maroon with the pink, right? Maybe I like a mix, right? So just take a look at people you follow and you look up to, and don't forget to add your own edge to it.
So what is in a brand? How would you define that?
There's so many moving parts to a brand. In a personal brand, or
Yeah, let's do personal brand.
for a personal brand, I definitely want to start with authenticity. I see and I know firsthand of a lot of people online, they're trying to impress people online. And then sometimes you get close enough and it's a totally different entity. So I always say you want to be exactly who you are online, who you are offline.
Okay, so what happens if you're a miserable, crusty witch?
You got a lot of spiritual
I'm,
work to
I'm
do.
gonna go down to spirituality. Fast forward to
Yeah,
the next
you
component.
know, and that's okay. If you're a crusty witch listening,
There are people who
that's
feel
okay.
like,
That's okay.
yeah.
But then you have to ask yourself, why are you a crusty witch? Like what? And there's many reasons. Like maybe something in your childhood. Maybe there's, again, maybe the conversations you're having with people throughout the day. Maybe your friends are complaining, and then you start complaining. I went through this shift. There was a time where I was pivoting into this version of myself, and I have friends that I grew up with. I know since I'm 10 years old, 12 years old, and they're not as entrepreneurial, which is okay. And I didn't cut them out, but I would have to set boundaries on conversations. Like if we're complaining a lot and we're not finding a solution, I can help you find a solution, but I can't complain alongside with you. So I think that's important to really take a look at your life, whether it's your business or your personal life, and take a real look at what do you talk about? What are you eating? How are you spending your time? And really figure out where in your life can you improve and what steps you have to take to do that.
Oh my gosh. I'd say I'm reading a book right now that's like so underrated. And I'm going to talk about this in another episode, but it really double clicks on like a lot of like Joe Dispenza work and spirituality and coming to self, and how you can't actually do anything in life and business as a mother, as a partner, unless you're working on yourself. And like, it's so simple to say. People are like, Renee, what does that mean? It means like, face your demons, look in the mirror and like yell at yourself, because you got to get over yourself. Like past trauma. In this book, they talk about like quantum, like spirituality and all this stuff. And even today, I had this like aha moment where I just hosted a big event here in Kelowna, BC, the one that, Lori Harder, which we were talking about earlier, came to speak at. And the event was beautifully executed. It was exactly as I expected, because I had already envisioned I had already experienced the event. And it was like a weird phenomena, because in the world of like quantum physics and spirituality, there's no time. Time doesn't exist. It's a construct of humanity. And so when I tell the story about visualizing myself in this pink skirt on the stage in front of hundreds of women, it's because I had already experienced this. And I am now going back to almost a month ago, now relived what had already happened. And
Mm.
so sometimes we get stuck in these moments where we're like, who am I to build a personal brand? Like, who am I to be Jackie Minsky and do the work that you're doing? Who am I to be interviewing you? Who am I, So, but when you actually can get past the fact that we all have this possibility within us, then it's almost like we know what the heck we need to do. We know what we need to do. It's right in our gut. It's telling us what to do. It's pointing us in the right direction. That is also in personal branding, but it's like, you got to do the work.
I love that you brought up Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I'd love to briefly talk
Mhm.
about it a little more, because if there's someone listening and let's say they envision all these things, they want all these things, but their environment is toxic. Like sometimes we just can live in a toxic environment. Maybe it's a young girl, maybe she's a young adult, maybe she, doesn't live on her own, or he doesn't live on his own yet. Maybe it's a toxic relationship. What you can and should do, and I've done this in the past, is you can visualize while you're taking a walk. You can visualize while you're on a drive. And Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this, breaking the habit of being yourself. Every day, you have things that you do over and over. You're playing a program. You wake up, you eat the same thing, you see the same people, you might have the same conversations. So you don't give yourself that pattern interrupt to feel a different frequency in order for that to manifest. So if you are someone listening, I think you need to take a walk in a park maybe you've never been before. If you're driving home, Don't go the same way you've always gone, maybe make a wrong turn on purpose, just to have a fresh frequency in order to visualize those kinds of things.
Oh, I love this. And it's so powerful. I actually just read, and whether or not this is fact, y'all can fact check this, but they discover there's these like students at a college that learned how to put out fire with frequency. I don't know
Mm,
if you've seen this. There's a they lit this pan on fire, right? So they're just like a contained little fire, and they took this special machine. It had like certain frequency of bass, and they held it to the fire, and they turned it on, and it went boom, and the frequency blew out the fire.
wow.
Like so when you talk about like toxic spaces, you need to remove yourself from that. When you talk about getting into new frequency, I think about like Sarah Blakely, how she used to live, and maybe she still does, like 2 minutes from her office, but she would always take the 45-minute drive to get there because she needed that time and space, that contained frequency to do her magic. And now she's a multi-billionaire.
Well, the thing about frequency, and I talk about this frequently, is we have this vehicle, our human body, right? And everyone just, we think that this is our identity. And we forget that if I was to take my finger and draw a circle around my human, between me and my human, I have an energy field. And if the same thing keeps happening in my energy field, I'm going to attract the same results. So that is why we need fresh frequency, new experiences, new energy, because in our magnetic field, which I like to always imagine, I am in the center of a circle. Like imagine I'm like in a bumper car and I'm in a bubble, you know, and inside I have to really be careful of energy, people, conversations, right? And the best way to do that is to always be aware of your energy, because then I'll give you an example. If you're going to a party or an event and you know there's toxic people there, you can visualize yourself closing your circle, like closing the gates of your field, and energetically you will draw that boundary. You don't even have to speak to close a boundary. You could energetically draw that boundary.
Oh, I love that.
And
I
I've
should do that
had
with my kids. No, I'm just joking.
I have had really toxic people try to have conversations with me, but I've already sealed my energy by drawing that circle in my mind and my field.
So you don't let them seep into you. That
And it was like the big bad wolf. They would huff and they would get more angrier because I wasn't saying anything. I wasn't displaying that I was setting a boundary. I was just very calm, knowing I'm protected
oh, I love
because
that.
I
It's like armor.
spiritually, yes, it's
Boom.
spiritual armor. So when you,
Spiritual armor.
yeah,
Hallelujah. I need
it
that.
really works.
So what color is your bubble? Is it clear? I pictured mine being like maybe pink.
Yours definitely could be pink. Mine, it's just like a white. I imagine myself drawing like in a chalk. Like I'll just take a white, and when I visualize white chalk, I draw it around myself, and I see myself in the middle, and that's my field. And anyone that tries to penetrate my field through a toxic conversation or something that, you know, sometimes even like a scary, you know, when you hear the news, you know, something scary, I'm like, don't let this penetrate my field. I can observe. I don't have to absorb.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Okay, I want to go back to this idea that you mentioned about your identity isn't like your physical body. And it's not the first time I heard this, but it's very palpable because you kind of connected that to frequency. So then what is identity?
Identity is really, to me, I think it's really our alignment. Because, for example, when you're on the wrong path, you could still look like yourself, but then how do you know you're on the right path or the wrong path? You'll feel it. You'll spiritually feel, right? So, like I say this all the time. For me, it's something I called small sacred decisions, right? So, like if I wake up and I have, hypothetically, not that I ever did, but maybe I choose alcohol before something nourishing. I had that choice. We always have a choice. If I have alcohol, I will feel that that's not what I should have done. But because of my programming and maybe my upbringing or something I'm going through, my human avatar took that. But my identity, my wiser spirit was like, we shouldn't have done that. So, and people get lost with the human game, the human experience, you know? And if you really think, like if you were playing a video game, like let's say I gave you a remote control and I said, Renee, play as Renee. And let's say in that moment you're on this level and you see something healthy or something non-healthy. Even in a video game, you would choose the healthier option. But when it's us, because of all the programming and the stress and everything that life throws at our spirit, we take the easier route versus the one that's better for our avatar.
The stuff that is comfortable to us, it's familiar. Oh, I know that. On the days when I choose not to have a glass of wine, I feel not like just happier spiritually. Um, and like talking about spirituality, working with a spiritual therapist, she even said you can't actually have breakthroughs in spirituality if you're under any sort of substance. This could be addiction to even like chocolate. Too
Yeah.
much of anything's not a good thing. So
Yeah.
it's really fascinating. So I love that visualization of like playing the video game of your life because you want your character to survive. Like that's the point of the game is to like get out alive, air quotes. You're not going to go for the chocolate bar or the glass of wine. You're going to go for the broccoli as an example and the water.
And this is why so many, entrepreneurs, the discipline is important. The discipline is spiritual. It's not, we see on the internet, it's very like hoorah, but it's actually more sacred. Like if you're hungry, like, are you really hungry, or maybe you need some water? Are you really hungry, or you have nothing to do? Are you really hungry, or you're just aimlessly scrolling? So now you're bored and your body's signaling for you to eat. So you have to take all these things into consideration and really understand your why in every action you take.
So this is some like deep, profound work
Yeah.
that you have to do, especially when it comes to branding, because it's about the authenticity. I get that.
Well, here's the thing. It depends. I work with so many different people, and sometimes maybe that's not their brand. Maybe they're not health conscious. Should they be? I don't know. Everyone has their own path in life, right? Like there's people who maybe they don't want to be healthy. Maybe they enjoy, eating a certain way. Maybe it's their brand. Maybe they're foodies, so it really depends. As long as you're authentic to yourself, you're having, the most important part also is that you're on a high frequency, you're enjoying it, and it's safe. I always say, as long as it's safe, and not dangerous to you or others, go for it. But as long as it's authentic to your spirit and it inspires you, for me, for example, I've worked with a lot of companies, and then like a few months ago, my team was like, well, maybe you should build a course. So I started building out this back end of like free lead magnets and a course, and I was like, everyone put it on hold. I'm not ready. I have another company left to build inside of me. Like, because for me, the course wasn't inspiring, right? But if everyone told me like, do it because, you have a great personal brand, it's your next step, but it really didn't inspire me. I felt like I had a little more left to do before I even think of a course, but I had to be authentic and true to myself to say that. But maybe there's someone who they are ready to sell a course. As long as you feel inspired by what you're doing, that is your brand.
Yeah.
Because
And then it's not that it's easy, it's just that the hard moments are more like you can get through them a little bit easier because you see the alignment, you see that this is part of your vision. So even when I was putting on my first ever event, like 300 women in a room, which is absurd to have like a first event with so many people, but I already saw the end goal. And it was hard, of course. There were days that were just like crazy, but I got through it because I knew what the outcome was. And we achieved it. We crushed it. And so with that, we know what's next step for the brand and for what we're creating. And yes, there's been people that are like, we should do this, you should do that. And I was like, that all sounds great, but I actually know that's not what I'm supposed to do. Right? And
yeah.
simple skills. We sometimes are just destined to do all these things, which are just busy work, but don't actually solve anything. So let's go back to spirituality.
Yes.
When was there a moment that you realized that business and spirituality were so tightly connected?
This is a very funny, I guess it's funny, but it's interesting. So when I first started working with big companies, and I was spiritual growing up, I was always the one that would talk about manifestation. I practiced manifestation since I was a teenager. I used to watch Tony Robbins. I used to watch, all the greats because I had a curfew. Like while all of my friends were partying, my dad had me home. So I was like on YouTube before anyone knew who Tony Robbins was. I was already like into all these like developmental mentors years ago. So growing up, I was always not the outcast, but I was always manifesting and thinking of like how to manifest in my life. And then it got to a point where I had to work with real companies who they don't manifest. And the closer I got to some time, some of the leaders at the top, they weren't conscious. Sometimes they were mean, sometimes they were aggressive, and they would take it out on their team. And you could see the team was anxious, and you could see that the team was broken, communicated. There were so many issues that I wouldn't have time. And at one point, I was like, if this is business, I don't want to be a part of it. And then I read a really good book, Conscious Business by Fred Kaufman, who was actually former VP of LinkedIn. He helped build LinkedIn. And it's a very beautiful spiritual book. And he talks about how business has to be conscious because if you're a leader, and Gary Vee does an amazing job at this, by the way. Gary Vee is so conscious. He's so great to his team. Not only does he talk about it, but I know people on his team. And, if you're a leader, how are you treating your culture? How are you treating them? Do you know them? Do you know that if one of your team members goes home and they're broken and they're upset or they're depressed, and then they bring that back into your business, believe it or not, that will somehow manifest because their interaction with another team member and then another team member, somewhere there's going to cause chaos. So when I started to observe business in that aspect, plus I could see the businesses that were starting to fail versus the ones that the momentum was there and it was starting to pick up. One time we launched a product for one of our clients, and it was like a $14.95. It was like a low ticket entry offer, but the team was so excited. Like everyone on the team was so excited for the launch that within the first like 2 hours, it was a $20,000 launch from a $14 product. So, and we looked at that as a team and we said, why do you think that was so successful? And it was because every single person that was part of the marketing, the strategy, we were all so excited and put so much into it that it just boom, So that's when business became spiritual to me, is when I started to observe the people who weren't conscious and weren't self-aware. And then I started to see what works and what doesn't amongst those kind of companies.
Why do you think certain people are not conscious? I mean, they're conscious, but they're not like in the frequency of possibility is like what I like to describe it.
I think that's a great question. I think it's for the reason that we've heard the term woo woo. And I think the masculine energy thinks it's woo woo. And woo woo, to anyone listening, like, what are you saying? Like, what the hell is a woo woo? Woo woo means like it's all like mystic and up in the air and like magic. And it's like, no, it's just awareness. I'll give you a really good example. And I just saw a movie, Angels in the Outfield. I don't know if you've ever saw it before.
That's
You
like
probably
old.
did. Yes, it's
Yeah.
an oldie, but I rewatched it with my son, and like something in that movie, like this is a good example. In the movie, if you've never watched it, it's about baseball, and a little boy in the movie sees angels, and he tells the coach how to position players based on the angels working with the players. And there's a few moments in the movie where the coach is super aggressive, and the boy's like, well, maybe the angels don't like that you're cursing. So it's just have awareness to how you're treating your experience. And I say your experience because if you're cursing or you're upset throughout the day, you're actually hurting yourself more than you're hurting anyone else. And that's going to manifest in different ways in your life. So that movie was so interesting because it had such awareness for spirituality. Like, because we don't notice if we're driving down the road and someone cuts us off and instantly it's like, and it's like,
Oh,
well,
I'll
maybe
tell you a
they're in a
story with
rush.
that.
Yeah.
I think it was last year. I'll never forget this. I was turning right onto a bigger street, and there was a woman behind me that just like came out of the blue. She was honking. You can tell that she was in a rush to get somewhere. And I couldn't do anything because there was a pedestrian with her dog crossing the street. So I was trying to turn right and I was waiting for the pedestrian to go. But from her vantage point, she couldn't see that. So she was in her mind, she's like, what is she doing? Honking the horn and like revving her engine. I finally go and she's like kind of tailgating and then she starts backing up. We both show up to the red light. And I'm like, I don't want to look over at her. I'm like, I don't know what kind of day she's having. She rolls down the window and she looked at me and she's like, ma'am, I am so sorry. I am in a rush. I'm so late and I did not see those pedestrians.
Mm,
And I was like,
yeah.
that's all right. Just have a great day. And like for her to be like, whoosh. But also, I just didn't want to get into her energy. And like, we don't know
Yes.
what's going on, but think about these instances as like leaders or managers or whomever on the team that's having a moment that's in that negative, like, ugh, that sticky, icky stuff. And that does just seep into everybody else. I actually, in my last agency, had a team of 12, and our most senior person on the team, she was incredible when she worked, but she mostly complained about everything all the
Mm,
time. And she was toxic, and we knew, but when she was focused and she was working on the right tasks, she was so good at what she did. Unfortunately, she bullied one of our team members to the point where I was like, this is it. We're done. And so I just said, hey, listen, your position here is no longer available. And we gave her everything she needed for severance and all that stuff. And then she turned around and sued me for wrongful dismissal, which was not surprising given who she was. But I remember that she was on our team for 2 years and 2 days, and she should have left 2 years prior.
mm,
That energy, it was like, and I was young and naive. I just didn't know. But oh my gosh, as soon as she left, the whole team kind of just went, like, wow, that was just this weight that was carried over them for so long and nobody could figure out what it was.
mm.
One person, one person.
Well, I think you all knew what it was, but again, when we're faced with day to day life, we don't want to point fingers. We sometimes use logic more than we use intuition. And I always say energy first.
Yeah.
Like your logic will catch up to you. Sometimes just go with your gut, like go with your intuition, and your logic will catch up. Because if you're in a situation like that where you meet someone and right away your intuition's like, but logically it looks good on paper, it does its job correctly, you bring that in, that starts to trickle in your life. And then when you part, it creates another, potential disaster. So I always say energy first, and I swear by it. If I don't want to talk to somebody, I'm not talking. If I don't want to answer a text, I'm not answering, and it's because I'm moving in alignment and also in integrity to my vision. So I think that's a big thing. And it's important because it will align us with the right people, with the right energy, with like minded people and
Mhm.
people of our energy. And it'll just, again, like a magnet, it'll just start coming towards you
Yeah.
because you embody it. You're not trying to put on a facade. You are the thing that you say you are or that you want in your life. So definitely, I think, subconsciously you knew, but again, when we're younger, we use too much logic.
Well, that's it. And there was kind of like, and I see this in so many female entrepreneurs, is like this try to prove yourself. Like women tend to dip into the feminine, which is the intuition more than the head, right? We're like intuition, heart more than anything else. And no one's ever said that they regretted following their intuition. I don't think anyone's ever made a drastic mistake in their life when their gut was saying no, 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 or yes, yes, yes. But it's really hard to back in business when people are like, well, why'd you make that decision? You don't have the facts. And you just say, well, I'm following my gut. It's like, how do you back that? Where's the proof? People sometimes need this validity in order to make this decision.
Well, I'll tell you a story. Yes and no. Sometimes, again, if you have a very strong intuition, listen to it. I was working with a company, and the person that was, I guess you could say, managing the team, I knew right away as soon as we were introduced, toxic for the team. And I said nothing because, again, we were younger and, that's not my place, to go to the founder and say, hey, I think this is, a toxic situation. Within months, the whole company and the whole team started falling apart. And I knew right then and there that from the initial I should have said something because the founder really trusted me. But again, I didn't. And so sometimes you really don't need the proof because sometimes the proof is bad.
Yeah.
Sometimes the proof is a disaster. And, I'll give you an example. I think about it like this. If I was baking a cake, and I'm a terrible baker, but let's say I decided to bake a cake and I see a flame or something in the oven, I'm not going to say, oh, well, maybe it'll go up in flames, maybe it won't. I'm going to turn the oven off and put out the fire.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with your intuition. Why are you going to wait for something to go on fire, metaphorically, for proof of a disaster?
Okay. Now I want your perspective on this because we'll say that there's somebody in my life, whether this is a team member or a family member or a friend, it's beside the point, who is a wonderful human being, who is not malicious, who's super caring, a really big cheerleader, but there's something off about them. And that's all I have to say. And I don't know, it's like the energy, the frequency, what I've put my finger on is it just that person doesn't feel authentic in what they do. I don't know how to, and it's important that I have this conversation. I know I need to because I've already had this conversation. Going back to like quantum understanding spirituality, there's no timelines. I've already had this conversation with this person and I know that there's a good outcome, but I don't know what we talked about.
So sometimes I do channel. I don't know if you knew that. So I do have channeling abilities. I don't talk about it so openly because it's like that is really woo woo. As soon as you said that to me, it just felt like kind of like what you said earlier. It's a person that wants to prove themselves. So it's
Yeah.
not malicious, but there's something from their childhood. They're proving themselves to either somebody or just the world. It's not malicious, but sometimes in these situations, even though it's not malicious, it doesn't mean it's aligned because maybe if this person does some more work on themselves and heals, maybe there'll be a better outcome. Because even if it's not malicious, it's wrong energy because that energy still will trickle into you. So maybe for right now, it could be better to calmly, slowly just part and then, let that person go on their journey and see if they heal. It feels like a healing more than a malicious thing. It's really like the energy I feel is like I really want to prove myself
Oh,
for
that's
whatever
it. Oh,
reason.
without a shadow of a doubt. Um, it's complicated and like a lot of relationships, but this
Yeah.
person is like very much a part of a good friend group. So
Yeah.
it's tough. I think about this even in like leading a team when there's nothing wrong with the person, but there's something that's just not right. And I feel like my intuition is saying that I'm the person to have this conversation with this person because other people have also mentioned the same thing. And they're like, I'm not going to have the conversation but I'm like, it's on my mind because I know I'm the chosen one.
Yeah. And sometimes the conversations go good and sometimes here's the thing, if a person's not ready to receive information, don't get frustrated. You can only be the messenger, and however they receive that information, they do what they want with it. Some
Yeah.
may receive it good, some may receive it bad. At the end of the day, as long as your intention for that conversation is pure. I always tell people, even when you make an announcement, like, let's say you just made $1 million, right? Before you tell somebody, ask yourself, am I telling the person I'm making $1 million because I'm bragging? Or am I telling the person because this feels genuine and I'm proud of it? Like the way we speak and how we speak and our intention is the seed of our words. So in that moment, are we trying to correct someone because we feel like we're right? Or are we genuinely trying to bring awareness to someone?
Yeah.
So
That's
our
it.
intention is the seed of our words, and that really helps with outcomes in conversations.
Yes. So also I learned that if you preface a conversation with something like, "Hey Jackie, we need to chat. I have some bad news." is actually sets the conversation up to be more fruitful than just dropping it in saying, you're fired, right? Because then
Yeah.
they're like, oh, okay, 1 second, acknowledgement. This isn't going to be good. I'm prepared. Bring it on. It's kind of like, do you want to hear the good news or the bad news first? What's the best way to start?
Well, even with getting fired, I feel like, and I've been fired in the past and I've fired people in the past. I think leading up to it, we always know. It's all energetic also. Like if you ever think of when you were younger, maybe got fired from like a silly position or whatever, you kind of knew it was going to happen because there was a disconnect with you and your boss. Or if you ever fired someone, you feel like they knew also before you. So energy is everything. So sometimes before we even say certain words, we get into those situations and sometimes we'll just know. We'll just know.
Oh my gosh. And we just, so much of us just like puts up this guard. Like we don't want to believe it, even though we
Yeah.
already know it's true.
Well, because we've been programmed. I always
Yeah.
tell people if you think about it, we go to school from a young age and we're taught two plus two is four, and given it is. But, we're around peers growing up and we're constantly trying to fit into that classroom, like what are our peers doing? So you grow up and you try to do the same thing. You go to a job, you just keep playing that over and over, and you just don't know better because you were told from a young age, this is blue, this is red, this is four, this is five, and you've not been taught how to use your intuition. Like, for example, with my son, I've played this game of I'm thinking of a number. Just intuitively tell me what you think. Don't think. Like, intuitively, what do you feel? And he'll have to guess numbers. And he's very intuitive because I'm working his intuitive muscle with him. So, of course, when we grow up, we feel our intuitive muscle less because we've been using our logic more.
It's all about like this the entanglement of the universe and how our communication. So when people say I can read your mind, it's like kind of fact. Because if you're putting it out there enough, then so like this book that I'm reading. So I was on the treadmill this morning and I hate the treadmill. It's so boring. It's the same visual, like I nothing's new, right? It's always the same thing you're looking at. But I'm looking out over the park in my house. And there's this one tree that kind of stood out to me. And I was like, I'm gonna focus on this tree. And I'm running, I'm like so bored. And I'm like, in those moments where I feel myself holding my breath because I'm so bored, I looked at the tree and I just connect to the tree. It sounds so stupid.
No.
But as soon as I connected to that tree, I was motivated, entertained, and I could breathe better. Even
Mm,
though they came in like 45-second intervals, but it was like I had that moment of, the tree was across the valley. It wasn't anywhere close to me, but I could connect to this one tree that stood out. So like this whole idea of like knowing and reading minds, it's really about this entanglement, how we're all connected on some level. And the knowing is within us already, is in our gut. We know, we just know.
Well, trees
Um,
are, and to someone it may sound silly, but to me it makes so much sense
yeah.
because I used to do, and it's funny because it's like a TikTok trend now, and I haven't tried the TikTok trend where they're talking to the trees and the trees are like tapping them. Have you seen the TikTok trend?
No.
It's so funny because, and I'm going to sound crazy, but I'm going to say it. When I used to go hiking, I used to go alone, and again, I used to also get bored, and I would see all these trees, and I'm like, all right, guys. If you could hear me, just like make it a little windy, like I would energetically like push this frequency out of me and it would get a little windy. Like I would walk by and I was like, oh, and I've tried it so many times that it actually works, but now it's a TikTok trend. And I was like, I don't know, but
You
trees
invented it.
yeah, it did. I was like, if you think of the movie Avatar, not to like
Mhm.
really get woo woo here, but everything around us has its own frequency,
Yeah.
and we have to understand it too, so
Yesterday, we did an offsite, my business partner and I, and we just came to like an agreement on some big things, right? And she's a woman of faith, and I am too, but not like her. And we were working right outside this big picture window that overlooks the lake and these mountains. And as a joke, I turned out and like I always do this. I always put my hands up to the sky and I'm like, either thank you, God, or like, show me your sign, or why me? And I'm like, show me a sign as a joke. And I'm like, hurrah. And then she's like, oh, I just saw a hummingbird. I was like, oh, that's cool. And I was like, show me a better sign. And we saw a white dragonfly.
Mm.
Never seen a white dragonfly before, ever in my life. Does it even exist? I think so. It's like an
That's,
albino dragonfly.
have you ever asked for a specific sign, like something that's like not even possible?
I don't think
You
so.
should try that.
Okay. Yeah,
That gets
like a
really interesting.
gold bars. Show me
Yeah.
some gold bars, please.
Yeah, I one time, it's funny you say white, because one time I wanted to see like a very little specific kind of butterfly. I was like, show me something that just like will, like, it's specific. And this butterfly was all white also, but it was so little. I was like, is that real? Like, as the like, it was actually, and I saw, and I was like, that is the smallest butterfly I think on planet Earth. And I asked for it specifically because you always see butterflies, and I'm like, I don't want a butterfly as a sign. I'm like, show me a microscopic butterfly, like,
Oh,
like
baby.
something that I will know that that is a sign. So ask, and I
For
learned that from
specific.
Gabby Bernstein. She talks
Okay.
about specific signs, and then when you get the sign, don't ask for a signier sign. you know,
Like that's what I did. I wanted something more
like
significant than hummingbird. Okay, this has been awesome. And all this stuff about, as we're discussing, like spirituality, entanglement, quantum stuff, is if it's too woo for you, that's fine. But I really urge the listeners to go and just double click on this, because all of this is the work you do that never ends, by the way. And especially if you're becoming the personal brand that you want to put yourself out there to grow, to prosper, to get in the media, this work is important. I have one last question for you. When I ask you what it means to be a wild woman, what is that for you?
Oh, I love this question. To be a wild woman is to not be afraid to break your own program. Don't be afraid to break your own program. Growing up, I come from Russian speaking parents, and my sister and my mother never worked. The men took care of them, and my father, and they wanted the same for me. And at 18 years old, I just knew I didn't want to and there's nothing wrong with being a housewife and a mother, because I am those things also. But I just knew at 18, I did want to work. I did want to be an entrepreneur. And I did have a sheltered upbringing. So I taught myself to take the train. I printed 100 resumes and I went and I just handed them out in the city. And I got my first job. And that taught me it's okay to break your own programming. You don't have to be what is normal to, whether it's your peers or your family. Wild to you could mean, what's the vision for your life and how are you going to get there no matter what anyone around you says?
I love that. Show me a signier sign right now. Let's go.
We're going to get struck by lightning.
Yeah, it gets boom. Well, it is raining today, which is very weird here. Okay, so where can people find you online?
So on Instagram, I'm Jackie_Minsky. That's pretty much where you can go. And then all my links are in my bio. I'm the host of Business Alchemy. We're on the top charts on Apple. So Apple, Spotify, iHeart, all the podcast platforms. So they could find me there as well. And just JackieMinsky.com.
Love it. Well, Jackie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.